So students, I'm going to start the types and the distribution of forest and wildlife resources from chapter number 2, forest and wildlife resources. Okay. And today we are going to discuss about the different types of forest. Okay, the different types of forest and also about their distribution. So let us start with this topic about the types and distribution of forest and wildlife resources. Okay. So in our country, around 24% of the total geographical area of our country is under the forest cover. Okay. So these forests, they have been classified into different categories. Okay, according to their importance. According to their importance, they have been classified or categorized into different categories. Even if we want to conserve our vast forests and the wildlife resources, it is rather difficult to manage, control, and regulate them. Okay. So though we want to conserve our vast forests and the wildlife resources, but many a times it is quite difficult. Okay, it is quite difficult to control, manage, and regulate the forest reserves of our country. Actually. Okay, because of certain constraints, because of certain physical, cultural constraints, problems. Okay. So in India, much of its forest and wildlife resources are either owned or managed by the government through the forest department or other government departments. Okay. So in India, much of the forest and the wildlife resources, okay, basically the forest resources of our country, they are mainly owned and managed by the government actually. Okay, by the forest department. Okay. And in some cases, there are some other department, government organization departments. Okay, they are also given the task to manage this forest and the wildlife resources. Okay, so basically, the forest cover of our country can mainly be divided into three categories according to the importance. Okay, according to the importance, they can be classified into three categories. That is the reserve forest, the protected forest, and the unclassed forest. Okay, these are the three different categories of forest according to their importance. Actually. So first, we are going to study about reserve forest. What do we mean by reserve forest? Actually, see, reserve forest. More than half of the total forest land has been declared reserve forest, and these reserve forests are regarded as the most valuable as well as the conservation of forest and wildlife resources are concerned. Okay, so basically, reserve forests are those categories of forests where we can find some of the rare species of plants and animals and which needs to be preserved. Okay, so in order to preserve this species of wildlife as well as that number plants and all. Okay, the forest has been categorized as a reserve forest. Okay, and special protection is given. Okay, to the species which can be found in this forest areas. Okay, so in terms of importance, the reserve forests are of very it is very important because these reserve forests are the areas where some of the valuable endangered species of plants and animals can be found actually. Okay. The next is the protected forest. So protected forest, about 1/3 of the total forest area is protected as declared by the forest department, and these forest lands are protected from any further depletion. Okay. So the protected forests are actually around 1/3. Okay, that is around 33%. Around 33% of the total forest area of our country is categorized as a protected forest. Okay, it is categorized as a protected forest. Okay, and this forest is considered as a protected forest because in these forest areas, basically the depletion of the forest is going on. Okay, because of deforestation, because of illegal hunting and poaching of the animals and all. Okay, the depletion of the forest and the wildlife resources is continuing. So in order to protect, in order to avoid further depletion of the forest resources, the forest has been categorized as a protected forest. Okay, so in both these cases, in both the case of the reserve forest and the protected forest, actually, the common people are not allowed to enter the forest region areas, without the permission of the forest department. Okay, and any kind of trespassing in this forested areas, in the reserve forest or the protected forest is subjected to legal punishment and all. Okay, so there are certain rules and regulations, specific rules and regulations regarding this reserve forest and the protected forest actually, which makes this forest different from the other classes of forest, that is the unclassed forest actually. Okay, and the third category of forest according to their importance are the unclassed forest. Okay, so basically the unclassed forest basically include the uh, the other forest cover, where like okay, which belong to both the government and the private communities actually. Okay, so these are the other forests and the wastelands belonging to both government and the private individuals and the communities actually. Okay, so this kind of unclassed forest, okay, there are some forest cover in our country where we don't find a dense vegetation cover, dense forest trees are not available actually, and even somewhere you will be finding that very large area is there, okay, which particular belongs to a particular group of people or community actually, okay, and there the forest has grown up actually. Okay, so those categories of forest also comes under the unclassed forest actually. So unclassed forest, in the unclassed forest there are no such strict rules and regulations actually. Okay, and this kind of forest are not so dense. Okay, this kind of forests are not so dense, and it does not have a different species or rich species of the plant and the animal species actually. Okay, so according to the importance, the forests are mainly classified into three categories. That is the reserve forest, okay, where the valuable plants and the animals are protected, okay, and the protected forest, okay, where the forest has been considered as a protected forest to avoid further depletion of the forest, and the unclassed forest. Okay, so these are the three different categories of forest, and the types of the forest, okay, it varies from one particular state to another. That is the size of the forest, the percentage of forest area. Okay, it varies from one particular geographical area to another. Like in case of our country also, okay, there are certain states, there are few states where the area under forest cover is very high, and there are certain areas or state where the area under forest cover is very less actually. Okay, so the next paragraph, which basically provides us information about the distribution of this reserve forest, protected forest in different states actually. The reserved and the protected forest are also referred to as the permanent forest states, maintained for the purpose of producing timber and the other forest produce, and for protective reasons. Okay, so basically the reserve forest and the protected forest, okay, they are considered as the permanent forest. The reserve forest and the protected forest, they are considered as the permanent forest, okay, because these are the dense forest area, okay, which are mainly being protected, or which are mainly like protection is given to these forest areas for the purpose of producing timber, other forest products, okay, as well as for protecting the different species of animals and the plants which can be found in this forest cover actually, in this forest regions. So in our country, Madhya Pradesh has the largest area under the forest cover, constituting 75% of its total forest area. Okay, so in Madhya Pradesh, out of the total forested area, 75% of the forested area of Madhya Pradesh is under the permanent forest cover. Okay, that is the reserve forest and the protected forest. Okay, after Jammu and Kashmir, after Madhya Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, Andhra Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, and Maharashtra, they have large percentage of reserve forest for its own, for its total forest areas actually. Okay, so on the other hand, the states like Jammu and Kashmir, the state like Andhra Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, and Maharashtra, in these states also the percentage of forest, reserve forest, okay, is quite large. Okay, it's quite higher than the total than the total as compared to the total forest area actually. Okay, because in these areas, in these states actually, we can find the dense vegetation cover, that is the dense forest cover actually. Okay, where different species of wild animals can be found. Like in case of West Bengal, basically the northern part of West Bengal actually. Okay, in the northern part of West Bengal, okay, like we are having like a dense forest cover actually. Okay, like the Mahananda Wildlife Sanctuary, the Gorumara National Park, Jaldapara Wildlife Sanctuary, different wildlife sanctuaries and the national parks has been set up in the northern part of our country, even the Sundarban Biosphere Reserve. Okay, so these are what? These are actually the permanent forest actually, okay, which is reserved and protected. Okay, to conserve, okay, to conserve the various species of the wild animals and the trees which can be found in these forest regions actually. Okay, whereas there are few states in our country where the percentage of this reserved and the protected forest, or you can say the percentage of the permanent forest, is not favorable actually. Okay, for example, Bihar, Haryana, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Odisha, and Rajasthan, they have a bulk of it under the protected forest actually. Okay, so Bihar, Haryana, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Odisha, and Rajasthan, they have a larger area under the protected category. Okay, but in case of this West Bengal and all, means a large percentage of the forest area comes under this reserve category actually. Okay, All northeastern states and parts of Gujarat have a very high percentage of their forest as unclassed forest managed by the local communities. Okay, so basically in the state of Gujarat and in the northeastern states like especially in Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram and all, in these states actually, the forests are classified as the unclassed forest. Okay, why they are classified as unclassed forest? Because these forests are being managed by certain communities, by certain group of people, basically the tribal peoples living in these northeastern states and all. Okay, they are the ones who look after the forest covers and all. Okay, so this is why they are considered as the unclassed forest actually. Okay, so this is what about the distribution of forest cover in our country. So among all the states of our country, Madhya Pradesh has the largest area under the permanent forest cover. Okay, and even to be more precise, Madhya Pradesh is the state which is having the largest area under reserve forest. Okay, means a larger percentage of the forest cover in Madhya Pradesh is the reserve forest actually. Okay, so this is what about the classification of forest, that is the types of forest according to their importance and as well as the distribution of the forest, okay, reserved and the protected forest in different states of our countries actually. So the next one which we are going to discuss is the community and conservation. And here we are going to discuss about the various conservation strategies which were adopted by various communities, okay, to protect the forest resources of our country actually. And even there were many social movements, okay, there were many movements actually which were carried out, okay, to protect the forest resources actually. So conservation strategies are not new in our country. We often ignore that in India, forests are also home to some of the traditional communities. Okay, so conservation strategies are not new in our country actually. Okay, the conservation strategies are very much older because there are many tribal groups in our country. Okay, there are many group of people who live on in these forested areas. Okay, who find their livelihood. Okay, who earn their livelihood through these forest areas and all. Okay, so this group of people, they have adopted various measures. Okay, they have followed their own way to protect the forest and the wildlife resources of our country actually. Okay, so these forest resources or the forest reserves of our country are actually, okay, the home, they are actually the home to various traditional communities actually. Okay, so in some areas of India, local communities are struggling to conserve these habitats along with government officials. Okay, and in some areas of our country, the local communities, okay, they are struggling. Okay, they are working very hard to conserve the habitat, to conserve the areas, okay, which are the habitat of different wild animals, wild plants and all. Okay, along with the government official, along with the help of the government organization and all. Okay, so recognizing that only this will secure their own long-time livelihood. Okay, so why they are helping the government actually? Why they have came forward? Okay, to conserve this, to protect the forest and the wildlife resources actually, because they know that if the forest and the wildlife resources will be conserved, okay, it will help them to continue their long-term livelihood actually. Okay, because if the forest and the wildlife resources are depleted, so this group of people, okay, they cannot, it will be difficult for them to earn their livelihood actually. Okay, because their entire livelihood, it depends upon the forest and its reserves actually. Okay, and such some examples are like in case of Sariska Tiger Reserve. Okay, in Sariska Tiger Reserve, Rajasthan, the villagers have fought against mining by citing the Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, so in Sariska Tiger Reserve, which is a tiger reserve in Rajasthan actually, okay, the some of the private organizations, okay, they wanted to carry out the mining activities. Okay, they wanted to carry out the mining activities because here some of the minerals were available. Okay, so in order to carry out the mining activity, the forest needs to be cleared. Okay, so in this case, the villagers actually, the villagers who were living in and around the Sariska Tiger Reserves actually, okay, they protested against those private individuals actually, okay, against the mining activity by citing the example of the Wildlife Protection Act. Okay, so this Wildlife Protection Act, okay, it says that the forest and the wildlife resources, okay, cannot be indiscriminately utilized or it cannot be exploited. Okay, so the people of this Sariska Tiger Reserve actually, okay, they have taken help of this Wildlife Protection Act to stop the mining activities here actually. In the same way, in different parts of our country actually, the group of peoples, they came forward. Okay, they protested against the government, they protested against the individual companies, okay, organizations and all, okay, who were engaged in depleting the forest resources actually. So in many areas, villagers themselves are protecting habitats and explicitly resisting government involvement. And in many areas, actually, even the villagers, okay, on their personal interest, okay, they are protecting the habitat of these forested areas, okay, without taking help from the government. Okay, even in some cases, they are rejecting the help of the government actually. Okay. The inhabitants in 5 villages in the Alwar district of Rajasthan has declared 1200 acres of forest as the Bhairodev Dakaf Sanctuary actually, declaring their own sets of rules and regulations which do not allow hunting and are protecting the wildlife against any outside encroachment. Okay, so in the Alwar district of Rajasthan, Alwar is the name of a district in Rajasthan, and in this Alwar district of Rajasthan, there are like in 5 villages actually. Okay, the forested villages actually. Okay, the forest village. In 5 forest villages, okay, the villagers, okay, they have declared around 1200 acres of forested land, okay, as as a protected area actually. Okay, and they have named that protected area as the Bhairodev Dakaf Sanctuary. Okay, and in this 1200 acres of forested lands, the villagers they have set their own rules and regulations. Okay, why they have set their own rules and regulations? They have set their own rules and regulations to protect the forest, okay, to protect the forest and the wildlife, okay, against any kind of outside encroachment, against illegal hunting and killing actually. Okay, so here you can see the different groups of people, they came forward actually, okay, to protect the wildlife and the forest resources of our country. Okay, so in the same way, okay, there are many groups of people actually, okay, who consider the forest, who consider the trees, okay, as a like they worship the trees and all. Okay, so one such example here is the Chipko movement actually. Okay, the Chipko movement is one of the famous movement in the history actually. Okay, like the famous Chipko movement in the Himalayas has not only successfully resisted deforestation in several areas, but has also shown that community afforestation with indigenous species can be enormously successful. Okay, so the Chipko movement was launched by the people, okay, in the Himalayan state, okay, against the construction of dams and the deforestation actually. Okay, so they have successfully resisted deforestation in several areas. Okay, and the people they started the community afforestation program. Community afforestation program is the people on their own they came forward, okay, to plant the trees. Okay, and they planted various indigenous species of trees actually plants. Okay, and which became a successful one. Attempts to revive the traditional conservation methods of developing new methods of ecological farming are now widespread. Okay, and even attempts has been taken, okay, to revive the traditional conservation methods actually. Okay, uh, conservation to revive the traditional methods of conserving the forest, to carry out the traditional methods of farming without hampering the forest areas and all. Okay, the various attempts has been taken by the farmers living in these forested areas, basically in the Himalayan region. Okay, and like the farmers, okay, like the farmers and the citizens group, okay, like the Beach Bachao Andolan in Tehri and the Navdanya have shown that adequate levels of diversified crop production without the use of synthetic chemicals are possible and economically viable. Okay, so like even I think you have heard about the this movement Tehri Dam Andolan. Okay, means there was protest against the construction of the Tehri Dam. Okay, so in this area in Tehri, actually the Beach Bachao Andolan, okay, means where the farmers, okay, they focused on using the indigenous seeds to grow the indigenous crops actually, okay, without using any kinds of chemical fertilizers and pesticides actually. Okay, and it has become a like successful one also. Okay, like without using the chemical fertilizers and the pesticides, okay, the farmers they have grown the crops and they have become successful, okay, by using the traditional varieties of seeds. Okay, and even in the state of Odisha, actually, okay, in the state of Odisha, for the very first time, the Joint Forest Management Program was introduced. Okay, and what is this Joint Forest Management Program actually? The Joint Forest Management Program is a program which was launched in Odisha, where the people living in the forested areas, that is, people living in the forest villages, along with the government, they work together to protect and conserve the forest and its resources actually. Okay, so this joint forest management program has become a very successful one. Okay, in our country actually, though it started from Odisha, but now it is widely spread throughout the country in different places, in different states of our country. The people, okay, living in the forested areas, okay, they are following this joint forest management program actually. Okay, and here the participation of the forest department and the local communities, okay, it has helped in protecting the forest and the wildlife resources actually. In India, Joint Forest Management Program furnishes a good example for involving local communities in the management and restoration of the degraded forest. Okay, so in India, the Joint Forest Management Program, okay, it has become a successful program actually. Okay, where there's an involvement of the local communities. Okay, to restore the degraded forested areas. Okay, to revive the degraded forest areas. Okay. The program has been in formal existence since 1988 when the state of Odisha passed the first resolution for joint forest management. Okay, so this joint forest management program was first introduced in the year 1988 in Odisha actually. Okay, and the joint forest management, okay, JFM, the joint forest management depends on the formation of local institutions that undertake protection activities mostly on the degraded forest land managed by the forest department. Okay, so in this kind of joint forest management program, what is happening? Okay, the local communities, the people, okay, the villagers, okay, living in and around the forested areas, okay, they undertake the work of protecting the forest. Basically, the degraded forest area means where already deforestation has taken place or the trees has become very much old. Okay, so in those areas, the local communities, they are planting the trees again. Okay, they are trying to increase the fertility of the soil so that the trees can be grown, and they are trying to uh, uh, create the habitat, natural habitat, okay, for the wild animals. And okay, so it has become a successful one in Odisha, and from Odisha actually the other states also they started following the strategy, okay, adopted by the people of Odisha. Okay, and now it is a successful program throughout our country. Okay. In return, the members of these communities are entitled to intermediary benefits like non-timber forest produces and share in the timber harvested by successful protection. Okay, so why did the what is the main benefit of the people who are engaged in joint forest management actually? Okay, because the people living in and around the forested areas, they were dependent on the forest, okay, for earning their livelihood. Okay, so in return, when they were working with the government to protect the forest, the government also promised them that they will be getting access to the forest resources. Okay, means they will be able to utilize the forest resources without hampering the forest. And by selling the timber, by selling the wood, by the forest department actually means whatever profit will come, they will get some percentage, they will get some share because they are helping the forest to preserve actually. Okay, so this program, the joint forest management program, is a successful one, okay, in our country, and almost all the states, okay, are now following this method to conserve and protect the forest and the wildlife resources of our country. Okay, so basically this entire chapter, okay, this entire chapter mainly discusses about the importance of the forest and the wildlife resources, okay, why they have got depleted and how they can be conserved. Okay. So the clear lessons from the dynamics of both environmental destructions and reconstruction in India is that local communities everywhere have to be involved in some kind of natural resource management. Okay, so the main thing which we came to know that in any kind of activities, okay, in any kind of activities actually, resource management activities or forest management activities and all, okay, the local community, the involvement of the local communities is very much essential, because without the involvement of the local communities, it will be difficult to manage the resources of any particular region. Okay, so if these local communities, they actively participate in the management of the resources, whether it may be the natural resource or the forest resource or the wildlife resources and all, okay, what will happen? It will help them to earn their livelihood, as well as it will help us to rejuvenate. It will help us to protect these resources and all. Okay, and also it will help us in protecting the environment. Okay, but there is still a way, okay, but there is still a way to go before local communities are at the center stage in decision making. Okay, except only those economic or developmental activities, there are people centric, environment friendly, and economically rewarding actually. Okay, So basically, this kind of this involvement of the local communities actually, okay, it will help the local communities to be self-sufficient. Okay, it will help them to earn their livelihood actually. Okay, and even the policies of the government must be people-centric. Okay, environment-friendly, and the policies should be economically rewarding, so that the local communities also find it interesting to participate in this kind of activities actually. Okay, so this is what about the conservation, okay, community and conservation topic, and the entire chapter, okay, the conclusion of this entire chapter.